And the exegesis was the written component, sort of explaining why that artifact had to be that research had to be presented as an artifact. So it was a very complicated process, and once it came through and and I finished it and we submitted it, it did quite well. And Tara said we should write a book about this because it's an unusual, I guess it's a success story, and it's an unusual model of how a creative-led PhD can be handled well, because I think, as I've come to understand it, it can be quite a difficult one for supervisors to manage, and also the professional department, the examination department, to manage that as well. So it was an unusual thing that warranted documentation and excavation.
And I could do a little bit from this book. So when she said it did reasonably well, it got 2 A's and the best thesis ever and won the best thesis of the year. Knock yourself out. So, whoa. So no pressure, Reem. Hi to everyone on the Reem stream. No pressure on the Reem stream. So Tiff was the archetype, and during her examination period, it became clear I wanted her to think meta and help the people that would follow to make that version of the thesis better and easier, because, as we've often talked about, it's very clear that this mode of thesis, artifact, so an object, it could be a film, series of photographs, design, a piece of furniture, anything at all really, the artifact and the exegesis from the Greek, which means explanation, they have a very troubled pathway through examination. And by that, it means you get people that love it, people that hate it. So there's a lot of what we call split decisions, and it's really challenging to create a clean and smooth way through the examination. Now, Tiffany did that incredibly in one of the most difficult modes of a thesis. So I wanted her to, I thought would just be a singly authored article, talk about the process to help the students that follow. But then it became very clear that this was becoming quite big, and what was an article was becoming huge. So I thought, look, maybe it's more than that. Maybe Tiff can write a book on this. But then suddenly you were doing all those other projects as well, and writing a singly authored book with everything else was seeming a bit challenging. And then, of course, Natalie Hills, the glamorous Natalie Hills, became involved in the story because Natalie had to enable the examination of Tiffany's thesis and try to improve the examination of the theses that would follow. So before I continue the story, I think we go straight to the glamour that is Nat, and just talk about examination, because you're a head examinations officer at Flinders, and the challenge of these particular modes, Darla.
Good morning. Is this on? Yes. I got involved. I think I was on leave. I remember being at home one morning, and I think I had to call Tara for a particular reason, some other drama in the office.
That
and
never
while
happens.
I was on the phone to Tara, she said, "Oh, by the way, how about this idea?" And I thought, "Oh, okay, this sounds interesting." And she told me, she said, "Just write, Nat, write." About what? I don't know. Just write what's in your head. Write. And that was about Christmas 2018. And it was interesting. My experience is obviously from a professional staff perspective, so administering the examination process for our PhD students, but it's a process that isn't always transparent. It's a slightly frightening process for some of our PhD students. I can see some nods around the room.
And that's frightening normally, so without the role.
And they spend, our dear students spend 3+ years of their life dedicated to this project. And it's really tough on them. And then all of a sudden they hand over this piece of work, this baby, to us, and entrust it with me and my team. And I thought it would be a really good opportunity to make the process a little bit more transparent for our student, to align their expectations with reality a little bit more. And also this was a little bit novel because it was our first performance-based exegesis and artefact. So there were some new processes and procedures that we worked through, and we thought this could be useful for other professional staff at other universities. We're certainly not saying this is how you should do it or we know how to do it, but it's a starting point to say, hey, here's some information. Give us feedback as well, because we can refine our processes, but it's something that we realised wasn't actually written about before, so it was quite new.
Particularly through digitisation as well, as digitisation has transformed what we do in the artefact exegesis space. This is a transformative framework. So how do you do international examinations now with the artefact and exegesis? So as you can see, what happened, Reem, is really it started with Tiff exploring her meta journey through doing this type of thesis and wrote an amazing third of a book that way. Then the Natster came through and offered this incredibly evocative and powerful exploration of examination. And these voices of these remarkable examination officers internationally are silent. And so it was very powerful and very important for me that this remarkable and brilliant woman had her day in the sun rather than being locked in a room as we do with her usually. So we don't let her out very often. So today, as you can see, she's here probably for the Lamingtons, but we very rarely let Nat out. Caramel slice, yeah, very nice. But so she wrote this incredibly powerful exploration of the examination, and then my job was sort of to, I suppose, like the DJ having two great records, try and find a strategy to meld them and make it into a completely rendered argument. But it's very much a three-way, a three-hand book. Each of us contributed to it, and I'm terribly proud of it. Is that the narrative that got us here?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm getting at that when the idea actually started, there wasn't like an end book product in mind.
Yeah, look, it was like most things in my life, and my husband is sitting in the first row so he can nod with his GoPro on his head quite aggressively. Most of my life is like a 1960s performance art experiment. And I have no real sense about where anything is ending at all. When I put on shoes in the morning, I don't know where that story is going to end. So when we started this, as I said, it really was trying to make sure that the wonderful Tiff was able to, as she is, she's got great politics, wants to help other people do this better through the journey she went through to make that better. And we really did start there, and then suddenly it became much bigger, and we realised, I think, that the plurality of voices in this book, it's a very unusual book, that the plurality of the voices made it stronger. That was my version.
I just feel a bit verklempt, to be honest, because you hadn't framed it in those ways before. I hadn't thought of it that you had done that to. I guess that's what, if you do read my chapter, because it is a chapter, really the essence of my argument is how important a good supervisor is, and how important the relationship is between a supervisor and a candidate, and. I acknowledge it's a bit of an homage to the supervisor I had at the time, and I think that statement that you just made is just further evidence of they're very rare supervisors who want to really cultivate not only the candidate's journey through the PhD, but also having a trajectory beyond that, because mine has not been a traditional academic trajectory regardless. So, sorry, you've just stumped me a bit by that statement. So
no,
thank you.
you're lovely saying that. Firstly, I am a secretive cow, so thank you firstly for acknowledging that, because that would be an accurate statement. But darling, the only reason we supervise is to ensure the students that follow us are better supervisors, and the best students teach us, and you taught Natalie and I mean, Nat might want to speak on this, but the best students, particularly in such an evocative and transformative way of doing a PhD, you taught us, and your fingerprints are all over the policies and the procedures that we've written.
Can you guys tell us a little bit more about like the sections of the book? Because I know Tiffany just said that her chapter was on supervision. So can you tell us a little bit more about the sections? Just give the audience a little bit of excitement for them to go and buy the book.
And also, Tiff, what might be useful is explain that you were actually writing it while it was under examination and through that too.
Oh, yep, sure. Whoop, I'll put that down. Yes. So the suggestion was, so I submitted my exegesis quite quickly because I had a deadline. The deadline being the performance that the examiners were going to see. And there's no better incentive to get an exegesis done than a deadline like a one shot at a play in a pool. So we got the exegesis in with about 6 to 7 weeks time for the examiners to read it. And then that was very exciting, as it is for anyone who submits an exegesis, even though, or a thesis, even though now you just press send and then you wait. And so to fill the time of waiting, Tara suggested that I write about the experience of that liminal space where you haven't become a doctor yet. You don't know if you will, but you've put in this enormous amount of effort. So my chapter is pretty emotional, to be honest. I've framed it, but it was a really lovely thing that again, the provocation, just write what you're feeling right now. And I think that I think it's there's a lot of stuff in that other people who are in the midst of a PhD might resonate with, because it is despite the fact that this is an incredibly intellectually rigorous journey, it's also an incredibly emotional journey as well. So I guess that's what my angle is. And part of my thesis, the framing of my exegesis, actually uses journaling as a research tool, because the actor's process very much involves reflective meditative writing and then framing that with theory. And I think that's a pretty standard practice for many arts practitioners. So I sort of framed my angle into the book along those lines as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
that's my
pretty
angle.
much.
That's my chapter.
Go, Nat.
Yeah. So, Nat, being a professional staff, how was the writing experience for you? And what's like the most section of the book that you're fond of, or you felt like had personal meaning to you? Am I putting you on the spot?
Good question.
Am I putting you on the spot?
No. I'm not sure if this is on. Oh, there we go. Is that, yes?
Yeah, babe.
There we go. Thank you, drama instructor. I knew you were going to ask me the question about how did it feel writing this book. So I'm not as good speaking off cuff as Professor Tara Brabazon or our drama expert Tara.
Liar.
So, these were some of the terms that first came to mind when Reem asked me this question. Massive imposter syndrome. I still have it now. I still feel I still can't believe I'm sitting here. I still feel it's unreal. It's surreal. It was daunting. It was very daunting. I've got an undergraduate degree and a master's degree, but not research-based. So it was new. I felt very privileged to be given this opportunity. Honoured. It was tiring. I fitted in amongst everything else, often at 5 a.m. in the morning when my son would have jumped into bed halfway through the night, and I'd quietly switch the light on and then write from about 5 to 6 a.m. to get a bit of time in between work and mothering. But it was also validating. One thing I did want to say is that as a professional staff member, sometimes in universities it's a difficult role. It's not always acknowledged. Sometimes you could almost say a second-class citizen. But Tara has never treated anyone like that in our team, and not myself. So it was a privilege to be given this opportunity, but also to be given this voice as well, because professional staff do contribute a significant amount to this university. Everyone from the cleaners, the IT staff, the library staff, the administrative staff, the security staff, everyone. And the universities wouldn't succeed without the professional staff. So to have this voice was a privilege and an honour, it did feel a little bit validating, like you were important and that you contributed. And I think one of the things I said in the book was, we're not the ones that are curing cancer. We're not in the labs, but we're providing the space so that our staff and our students can cure cancers. And we are just as proud of our students, our PhD students and their achievements, as anyone else in the university. So it was really good to be able to put that voice forward. So I'm very grateful, very, very grateful for that. Oh, yeah.
Can we just firstly, you're a rock star. And look, we're 20 minutes into this gig, so look, I'll get radically political if you're happy. Just for, I've waited 20 minutes, and now let's get dirty. Nat's dad's here. We can get political together, brother. Let me just state that the university, higher education, this is a complicated workforce. This is a diverse workforce. And too often, visibly, the sort of academics are poshing about. We're poshing, oh, look at me, I'm terribly important. Oh, yeah. And of course, students, when you're doing a PhD, you are the star of your own life, so you're really focused on what you have to do. And we forget very strongly that this is a complicated workforce, and it takes librarians, and it takes cleaners, and it takes IT staff, and it takes crew and catering. And it takes professional staff. And these remarkable professional staff all around the world allow our universities to run, like fuel allows a car to run. And the idea that we've got such a brilliant, extraordinary woman with a master's degree questioning her capacity to do this incredible work is remarkable. I mean, I've worked with people around the world, and Nat's writing, I hardly had to do anything to it. And my students, Aidan's in this room, my students know I'm an incredibly hard taskmaster. He's just nodded like noddy, can I say? I'm an incredibly hard taskmaster, mistress. And Natalie's writing is some of the most crystalline, beautiful, clear blue water prose I've ever had the privilege to work with. So I think part of what this book was about, to be honest with you, in my head, in my performance art Yoko Ono experience, part of what it was about is recognising not only the brilliance of this remarkable woman so she can be in the sun and feel the light on her face and people know her name and know what she does, and that's incredibly important, but that every single professional staff member knows that they are loved and they're cared for and they're valued. And you know what? That they can do it. They can do it with just a little bit of support. And so the idea that not more wonderful colleagues are doing this suggests we're not supporting and validating our colleagues enough. And this book stands for doing things differently.
Do you want to go back to the second part? So what was the most meaningful part of the book for you, or personal?
This is interesting. What struck you, Dal? Was there anything that went, oh, that's a bit weird? Well, weirder than normal, though.
Everything is quite weird in our office.
Yeah, it is.
I think my question struck her.
Yeah, I know. I haven't thought about that one. I think it was really good to write down on paper a lot of the things that we live by in our office, Beck, don't we? That we do and we act on, but we don't think about, that makes us a fantastic team. And what I felt was really good to write about was the values that our team run our office by. And that is being student-centred, that is being efficient, and having integrity as well.
And compassion.
Yes, in compassion for our students and understanding the story they've been through and how we have to care for this thesis, and make it safe for the students. So I think it was nice to put that in writing, from my head onto paper.
That's amazing. So what about you, Tara? What's your favourite part of the book? or
everything I didn't write. My favourite part of the book, and I should do the emotional bit of this story probably first as well, because I just finished the book that I wrote with my late husband after he died, Professor Steve Reedhead. So that was Trump Studies, those of you that know Trump Studies. And so I finished that book on his behalf. And to be frank with you, and I'm happy to sort of honestly share this with my close friends and thousands of people on the internet, that I didn't know if I could do it again. I really didn't. I mean, I'd written 18 books up to that point, 250 plus articles, and after his death, I didn't know if I could summon a book again. I didn't know if I had it in me. Every book is always a surprise. And when this performance art experiment occurred between these two remarkable women, they gave me life force back. And so that was the surprise for me, how easy the book was to write, how extraordinary that these three very different people, that the jigsaw came together so quickly and so easily, mostly when you're working with co-authors. And of course we've got scientists in the room when you're managing co-authors. Invariably there are scrag fights, there's sort of blood on the dance floor, people having rows that last decades. When you've got co-authors, people don't play nicely together, Beck. But this was smooth, clean, peaceful, calm, and three diverse writing styles fitted together like Lego. So that was the surprise to me, because I didn't know if I could do it again. I really didn't. I really didn't know if I had it within me to commit to something that big again. And with the courage and the commitment and the energy of these two remarkable women, I was able to go again, and we've kicked on from there. And obviously I've even found a new husband through this process. So really I need to thank these two remarkable women, because then another bloke appeared. And it's fantastic. So again, Professor Jamie Quinton was involved as we were doing the editing component of this as well. So really this book gave me life force to go again. And that's not a bad story from a monograph.
That's amazing. Well, can you carry on and tell us, how did the publishing go? Like, since the book was published in June, so like COVID, how did COVID have an impact on it? Did it have any delays? Did it make it more complicated?
Well, I'll answer this bit, and because it's my 19th book. I'll be interested with these two because you were reflecting on it the first time you went through this process. So again, the whole thing was a dream, was straightforward. We published with Emerald, and a big shout out to all our friends in Emerald around the world. I know the Emerald office in Yorkshire is watching this, so we love you and we thank you for everything. And it's my second book with Emerald. Look, they were stunning and they were remarkable, and there was not a single delay. So it was presented, it was smooth, it was clear. Oh, can I also say Emerald are fantastic. I recommend them as a publisher. They won the 2019 Academic Publisher of the Year in the United Kingdom, so they deal with that. But you can see why as an author, because I delivered the manuscript on time. Yes, COVID. And yet, remarkably, the sub-editing, all the processes went through magnificently. The iterations of drafts went through magnificently. There was not a single hitch. And we thought, a lot of our colleagues, a lot of my friends around the world watching this, were publishing books in this period from the big academic publishers, can I say, that will remain nameless, and there have been delays. And yet this small, bespoke, remarkable academic publisher in Yorkshire, it was an absolute pleasure and privilege to work with them. And I should also probably do a shout out. Nat's wonderful father is here. I know Tiffany has family members throughout the world tuning into this stream. Big hello to everyone. Monday afternoon in Canada, drinking heavily, knock yourself out. Bit of Savvy Blanc, do that. But I also need to log, just to add the oddity to this story, my 92-year-old father. Most of you have heard of Big Kev Brabazon. In his own mind, he's 6'2". He's probably about 5'4" at this point. He's 92. But he's actually done the indexes for my 19 books. And at 92, he did the index for this book and loved it. He loved working with, as he described them, the ladies. He enjoyed doing the index for the ladies, and he did it in a weekend. And not a change was made to his index through the publishers. So quite remarkable. remarkable. So it was a real family enterprise. So that was my perspective as, you know, I've seen all sorts of nonsense happen in academic publishing, and this was clean and smooth and magnificent. So, but for you two, it was the first book. What was your vibe? And I need to say hello to Will Peterson. Good morning, handsome.
As you said, I've never been involved in publishing anything before, really, apart from the PhD. And so I guess for me, it was just, again, it was an opportunity for watching how observing through the thread of emails, because Tara spearheaded all of this, given her experience and her contacts and pedigree of publishing. So it was really an opportunity just to watch and learn and observe how an academic leader works at their finest and at their most professional. It was very interesting to see how you engaged with the publishers, the level of respect and encouragement and enthusiasm for the project all the way through. It was a real lesson to me to recognize that you're an equal, in the process. It's a collaborative process with a publisher, and that even though these people I will never meet them in real life, most likely, especially now that COVID is existing. They felt like colleagues and friends and collaborators by the end. So it's just been a huge learning experience all the way through, and that was what I really gleaned from it. And also how painstaking the process is. Like, you really have to have an eye on the prize. It's much more complex publishing a book than I thought, and that's amazing to hear how simple it was, because I can only imagine what fortitude you need when it's not.
Because it probably came across to you as quite iterative.
Yes, absolutely.
But don't you love it that the actor's the one that said it's a collaborative art? I've never heard publishing described in that way before, but it really is. It's 10 people from the cover to the index to the sub-editors, who are, of course, around the world. It's an international industry now, that come together with the goal to make this the best that they can make it.
But it was really interesting to watch, those initial emails between yourself and the art design, or the graphic designer, or the sub-editor. Started in a very formal place, but then by the third or fourth or fifth email, you could feel the warmth of that relationship that had been developed. And I think that we can all afford a little bit more of that in the world right now. So that was good.
I feel the same way, but I was really quite surprised how quick the process was, and friendly it was. I haven't had this experience before. I didn't know what to expect in any way whatsoever, and each step of the process I kept thinking, is this real? This might actually be happening? Oh, we were a little bit further. And then the peer reviews came in, and other people liked it. And I thought, this could actually be real now. This could actually happen. And each step of the way, it was a little bit more validating and a little bit more real and a little bit more surprising and exciting, and a lot more grateful and smooth. Really, really smooth. So thank you.
Thank you.
So that's a really good advertisement for Emerald, can I say? I will take a cheque directly in Australian dollars. Thank you very much. Boom.
So let's talk a little bit about, so the audience of this book are PhD students, supervisors, and professional staff?
Look, absolutely. And of course, we've got librarians in the room, and of course, a lot of librarians online, and hi to everyone. And of course, the library community is incredibly important to this. The information literacy community is incredibly important to this conversation as well, because the artefact exegesis thesis is very difficult to catalogue, very difficult to organise, very difficult to manage. So part of what we're trying to do is demonstrate how the creative PhD can be understood as knowledge. Not only as information, but as knowledge, and be validated on that basis. So if people are interested in creativity, are interested in how knowledge is enabled through objects like films, popular music, performances, song, dance, furniture. If you're interested in how knowledge is created through that, I mean, in some ways that was the project of this book, to go, knowledge exists in so many places, obviously not in Donald Trump's brain, but in a time where knowledge really doesn't exist in so many places and it's an intellectual desert, acknowledging the great expertise when we find it and when we see it.
Anything else to add? So, like, what would PhD students
That's a good
be
one.
mostly interested in this book? I want to market your book around my college or around my
Because
colleagues.
you're the professional in this area, of course.
So, like, yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to get this book. So what would I, as a PhD student, would look forward to?
I think there's an interesting balance in this book between the candid emotions of the PhD student as they go through the experience. I think there's something to connect with that, but particularly, well, there's two things that I think are particularly valuable. One, I think it's really, really helpful to see what the examiners, that process, to have a little window into what the professional staff are doing and everything that's involved in the examinations process and that side of it. I think that will engender a huge degree of respect and relationship building with somebody who's entering the PhD process, and also what's involved between the supervisor-candidate relationship. I also think what is unique and might be helpful, and actually I'm spruiking it to a friend of mine who might be watching right now, who's contemplating moving from a traditional PhD into a creative-led PhD, is that, and she's in philanthropy, but she's very interested in narrative-based research. And what I think is really exciting about this is it's looking at the artifact and exegesis not just within the discrete discipline of the creative arts. And I think that's quite groundbreaking in the way, particularly Tara argues, that the artifact can frame research or propel research in a way that just the traditional thesis might not be capable of. And that's really exciting, and I think it really opens it up as a mode of research cross disciplines, which we need in these current times. We need more innovative ways of examining, of researching, but also reaching different audiences.
And also I love that because it is about the artefact not being art in many ways, and it is about popular culture. So it's opening the thesis out, again, to all sorts of knowledge systems, which has been my politics, if you like. And we are seeing, and we'll talk about this later, the artefact exegesis thesis exists throughout the disciplines now. So we have, I think, 3 students enrolled in nursing and health sciences, and hello to Maeve, who is one of them, who is using allied health. So using in that case, in Maeve's case, it is a novel set in the 1970s and managing and working through the history of mental health. And then the exegesis works through the transformation of mental health since the 1970s to frame that particular thesis. So it's validating popular culture as much as high culture, and why that's particularly important in a time of Donald Trump and Boris and ScoMo and Brexit is we need to stop populism. We live in populist times. A bunch of people think they are representing us and they are not. And so what makes popular culture different from populism is popular culture is of us. It's of our passions and our beliefs and our loves and our hopes and our terrors and our fears. And part of what I hope this artefact exegesis thesis will do is enable our friends out there who are DJs, our crew who do make furniture, to use popular culture in a way that is enabling knowledge as well. So sorry, I was in your way, Nat.
No.
Boom.
I agree with everything Tiffany and Tara have said. I think the book is particularly useful for students who are enrolled in not just a creative industry, but any industry where there's the potential to use an artefact to move research forward, and really helping define that, and understanding that the artefact is a way of researching and a research methodology and not just a piece of art. I think Tara has written that really clearly and really well in the book. I think the journey that Tiff has been through, and she has so openly expressed in the book, is wonderful for students to see. I think you've had tough journey, and I think you've been really successful, and I think it's great for students who are going through their highs and lows, as all of them do, to see those wonderful outcomes and that they can be there in the end as well. And Tiff is a wonderful example of that. One of the things I hope I have helped students do in the book is make the process more transparent, but also give you some tools. So there's some timelines in the book, there's some backward mapping techniques you can use in the book as well throughout your examination process. There's some references to articles that talk about what examiners are expecting a thesis to look like and what they're going to look for when they actually open up your thesis and review it. So I hope that's useful for supervisors, students, and other professional staff in other universities. And I'd be more than happy for other professional staff to contact me and have discussions about what they do and how we can improve and work together to make it even better, because I'm not saying that we're the best, we're on a journey and process as well.
Yes, whereas I think we are the best. You see, that's the difference between us. And also I should log that we've had our first submission of an artefact exegesis thesis in science and engineering in the last 3 weeks. And again, it's so hello to wonderful Narelle. But that was a great example of science education with the artefact being online curriculum and the exegesis explanation, dancing around that and showing the development of disciplinary literacy in the sciences. So that's really where we're heading. Reem stream.
Probably one more question that I'll ask, and then we'll give the audience a bit of a chance. So, considering it's Tiffany and Natalie's first book, and Tara, you have amazing experience.
I'm haggard and just past it.
What would your advice be to people or authors who would actually want to get started on their first book? Advice maybe regarding choosing their co-authors?
Oh, geez. I guess I was just going to harken back to, I was going to add another thought about value. So outside of, yes, the artifact exegesis being useful to non-artists, I think one of the things about my journey is that I'm not an academic now, and I sort of thought I was doing a PhD because I wanted to become an academic, and probably halfway through I realized, no, I don't. That's not going to be my career. My thesis is called Just an Actor. I am an actor. That's what I am. But I do feel that one of the things, and I think a lot of artists do PhDs for very particular reasons. They're looking for economic stability and perhaps a career trajectory, and they may, like me, find that that's actually not going to be their path. So I think it's useful to acknowledge that. I think that's a big thing in the arts, and I think that there are a lot of artists who are really struggling to find stability in a very precarious world. That now it's precarious for everyone, but what I feel like the PhD did for me, and I hope that comes through in the book, is that it gave me skills about research and writing and clarity of thinking and a vision of leadership, particularly women in leadership, that has been incredibly valuable to me. And I will take forward no matter where my career unfolds or how it unfolds. So it was a cross-disciplinary research, and it's the skills that I've developed, I believe, apply across disciplines as well. So I think that even though I don't envision in the immediate future a career in academia, I'm incredibly, incredibly glad I did it, and I went through that process with these people. So I guess in terms of advice for people writing a book, it would be, yes, choose the collaborators, choose the right collaborators to work with, and if you are new and you are doubting yourself, find those people who see more in you than you see in yourself, perhaps, and just write, just start writing. just start writing. But bounce that off of those people, because it's very easy to think it's too hard until you meet someone who's a force of nature who just goes, keep writing.
Old haggard, tired Natalie.
My advice would be just write.
Oh.
Just write. And that's what Tara told me. And I didn't, I was doubtful, but I wrote, and then I rewrote, and then I rewrote again, and I edited quite a lot, but I got there in the end. I think take the opportunity. It's rare to get these opportunities, and I'm not sure, this might be my only book ever, and I'm very proud if it is. And I'm very grateful that this opportunity arose, but you just have to do everything that's put in your pathway. So as soon as Tara said, just write, it would have been really easy to go, I'll get to that, or I'm really busy. But, which I do at times, but I just wrote. And I took that opportunity. And I think it worked. Because we were very respectful of each other. I think we had 3 different stories to tell. I think there were no egos involved. There was different skill sets involved with the co-authors. There was mentoring. I know you hate that word, I'm sorry.
This isn't me, is it?
I'm sorry, but it's true.
Oh,
You
dear.
supported us 100% through it.
Like an old
And
bra,
it's true.
lots of support.
Oh, shush. It's true. There was respect, there was different skills, and there was listening as well. And there was understanding amongst each other. You know, at times I think I probably held the process up a little bit because I was might have been a bit slow getting a draft to Tara, but, Tara understood. So the respect between the authors is really key.
And you're in full-time work with a son, so I think if you didn't understand, you might be living under a rock. The only couple of things I would say is that the mantra I live by, which does get me into a lot of trouble, so I'll just put that out there, but it is jump and the net will appear. And I do that pretty well on a hourly, minute-by-minute basis, looking straight at my husband. And look, life's a wonder, isn't it? Life's a wonder, and look, we all had a plan when we were 22 about what life would be like, and it's ended up nothing like that. And you know what? It's ended up better. Maybe weirder, but it's ended up better. So my line is always jump and the net will appear. When these opportunities come up, let's do it. Life's too short. Enjoy yourself. Knock yourself out. Have a go, and if you fall on your butt, nothing matters. And I suppose that's what I hope I gave these 2 wonderful women, is that there was no chance they were going to fail. There was no chance that something terrible or weird or odd was going to happen. They wrote brilliantly, and their voice and their views and their expertise, I hope, was always respected. And the only second bit of advice I'd always offer, about life is really that completed is better than perfect. Finished is better than perfect. And that's how you write a lot. That's how you write a lot of articles. That's how you write a lot of books. So just do it. Just get on with it.
That's how you write your PhD.
Yeah, well, I finished my PhD in 18 months while in full-time work because I had to. Because if I hadn't, I wouldn't have got the next job. So, capitalism focuses the mind. So done is better than perfect, and that's probably one of the great lessons, I think, from publishing and writing. Because you can we know this, once it's on the page, you can draft it. But getting it on the page is the first stage.
I think a lot of the advice that's just given out now can also be applied to PhD students. What do you think, Aidan? Just write. Yeah?
No pressure, Aidan.
No pressure. Well, I'll come back to you with a final question, but let's see if the audience would like to get down to some details. Go ahead.
Are we on Slido as well?
Slido's open here, so
the Reem stream is active. So please activate that.
So if any online participants would like to send us some questions through Slido.
Good morning, Karen Jacobs.
Hello, I'm Karen Cornelius. I'm doing a PhD autoethnography, writing a book, and I'm battling with the exegesis. Unlike your very creative swimming and drama exercise, this is about my life as a principal and how I've led social justice in a neoliberal world.
Yeah.
But my question is the exegesis. How much space is there for creativity? How much do you get away with, or what's the thinking about? I'm particularly interested in yours, Tiffany, how creative you were able to be, or is it a straight research-based?
Can I launch into the meta on that and then straight to these two? So, Karen, lovely to see you. It's lovely to see you in person, you superstar. So, what you've just hit on is a concept, a theory, which I think is the most important theory in life, let alone the contemporary university, and that concept is multimodality. The toughest artefact exegesis combination, the one where we see the highest number of fails, the highest number of split decisions, hashtag no pressure, is when it is a written artefact and a written exegesis. Because what happens is the two categories, because they're on the same interface or platform, they bleed into one another. So for the examiner, they start to not be able to differentiate between what is the object, the artefact, and what is the explanation of the artefact. And so what I would advise very strongly is, in your case, and again, the advantage of autoethnography, good, strong methodology, good heritage, is focus very strongly on yourself in differentiating modes for yourself. So really think about, what object am I presenting and why? What can I do with this object that I couldn't do in a traditional thesis? So be very clear and create the space or the separation for me, Karen, because what happens is, and this is where it does go pear-shaped real fast, is when they start to bleed. So very commonly this occurs in a novel, novella, or in a creative written object, is that suddenly the exegesis starts to talk about how it was written, not why it was written. And so when you do the how, you start to involve character, you start to involve narrative, storylines, and whys are much more complex than how. And in a PhD, we need the why. So make sure your exegesis is doing the why for me. All right. Thanks for that.
I don't know. I think, yeah, that the point of it being the artifact being the object was very easy to simplify because I was acting in I couldn't start talking about Bourdieu in the pool. It wasn't in the script.
That's a good thing.
But there was a really wonderful, that was the pleasure of it, was all the things that couldn't be said in an ephemeral performance, then I could articulate, and not just about the performance or about the art, but about the issues surrounding it. And so that just grew and grew and grew into a number of chapters. So, and it was not creative. The thesis side was thesis writing. It was academic writing. I kept those two quite distinct. Yeah.
So Karen, can we make sure that Karen gets a book? Thank you.
Yay, Karen, you get a book. You get a book. You get a book.
Thank you, Karen, you're a star.
We do have a question on Slido for Tiffany. So Tiffany, do you think your performance was improved by writing the exegesis?
Oh, good question. I don't know if the performance. Oh gosh, that's a really good question.
Good one.
You gotta.
I think I really enjoyed. Yes, I do think it was. Okay, I do think it was, because we were creating the performance. It was a new performance, and I was researching while we were rehearsing, and it meant that I brought question. And it was a topical issue. It was about abortion, and it was about disability rights. So it made me ask questions of my collaborators that were more informed because of the reading that I was doing than if I had just been an actor in the show. So in that respect, yes, I think it did contribute to the final product. But when I was in performance, what was so lovely was that I could just be a performer, and I could forget all of the academic stuff. I could walk away from that and change those two different hats. So, it did inform it in a way, but it did not ever. It never got into the writing of the work. It just made the piece live in a richer way and in a longer way, because otherwise a play is done. When it's done, it's done. You never get to do it again. And the real pleasure of writing about it, and I would like for any performer who's thinking about doing a PhD, the pleasure of that was that you have an ownership about the process that you do not get in any other environment where it doesn't belong to you anymore.
Lovely. Well, Maeve, you get a book. Was that Maeve? Maeve Collette? Yep.
Hello, Maeve. Good morning, Maeve.
Just send us your address if you don't mind.
Absolutely. What a great question. Good on you, Maeve.
So any other questions for our... Oh, yeah, go for it, Matt.
I'm kind of interested, is it possible in sort of like traditional journal article writing to disseminate the artifact part of the thesis? How would you go about that?
Should I start that one off? Now, what's tremendous about digitisation? What is tremendous about digitisation is a whole array of remarkable journals have appeared that enable the artefact to be presented with a cut down exegesis, a framing paragraph, if you will. But also there are magnificent journals, particularly in the Scandinavian countries, that allow the isn't that a surprise? That allow the artefact exegesis to live and dance in its own fashion. So that's the first thing I'd say. There are now specialist bespoke journals that allow for that, and that's tremendous. But also more traditional journals are allowing those spaces where it's often being called supplemental material, and we are working with that type of language at the moment, and I would be critiquing that, but using the supplemental material files to allow the artefacts to dance and to then have the exegesis in place. I've had a few of those. I do work in sonic media particularly, and sonic architecture. Some of that gets real weird real fast, let me say. One of my favourite articles is called The Sounds of Food. It is as weird as it sounds, and it is about, well, I know this will be a surprise to you, the sounds of food. That's a very interesting artefact. But they did allow the presentation of that sonic file that you click away and listen to, and then you are reading, in effect, an exegesis. So seek out those, what are often called these days, born digital objects. So if you go to the directory of open access journals and put in born digital objects, there are an array of magnificent journals that render that their project, and they're increasing in number. Thanks, mate. Great question. And you get a book.
Can I add to that, Tara?
Oh, I would love you to. Yeah.
I've ended up performing parts of that show, not in the pool, but parts of that show at a couple of conferences now that have not been creative arts conferences. They've been conferences about abortion, and that's been really very interesting. The most interest that I published an article that's also through women's studies, not through the creative arts. So as a arts practitioner, what I find really exciting about this is that the interest has not been in the arts, the interest has been in the issues, and it's opened it up, and so those issue-based conferences are looking for creative streams. They're actively looking for creative streams. Yep.
Huge. Oh, hello. Librarian to the stars in.
Hello. I'm Liz from the library. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the authors on this fantastic publication.
Thank you, Liz.
And would like to also just share some support for Nat in her endeavours as a fellow professional staff member. I do share some of your feelings, if you like, around imposter syndrome, inhabiting that practitioner research space that we do in the professional arena sometimes. So I do applaud that opportunity that you've been given, and I do hope that you do seek out further opportunities and potentially co-authorship with your library peers.
And can I just do an enormous shout out to all the librarians out there. We can't do what we do without our librarian colleagues, and I certainly, to be frank with you, use it as a compound noun, library academics. And I will continue to be using that phrase because I think you are both a compound noun. Remarkable. You are many things. You are Jedi Knights of our university. And we couldn't do what we do without you. And of course, can I just ask you a question, like hashtag no pressure, Liz? But in terms of collection management and in terms of managing those born digital objects, how is the library working with managing that digital diversity in the collection now?
great question. Thank you, Tara. It really has expanded our horizons as a collecting part of the institution. So what we are looking for are not just this kind of opportunity for people to share their work anymore, but of course all those born digital objects in whatever form they might take. So it's a really opportune question, because this is something we're looking at as a project at the moment in the library, as how to support our research community in their born digital archiving, and I'm using the little air quotes because there's archiving and then there's archiving. So apologies to my archivist colleagues, but in that sense we are really looking to support, I guess, more the discovery and access to those resources by an audience greater than just the Flinders community, but that worldwide community of researchers and community and peers that might be interested, whoever they are and wherever they are.
And of course the value of open access on those born digital objects as well. Wow, you're a rock star. Do you want to say anything, Nat?
We do have a question for Tiffany again.
She's so popular.
I know. So Kristen is asking, do you have any tips for writing about your creative process for the exegesis?
Ooh.
Oh.
You're getting the tough ones, aren't you?
Yeah.
Good one, Kristen. You get a book.
Yeah, good one, Kristen. My other supervisor, associate supervisor, Will Peterson, is here. Thank you.
Love you like life, Will.
And Will was amazing in encouraging me with what was just an instinct, which was reflective writing and journal writing, and he really supported me in using that as a methodology. And I think, that's nothing new. Stanislavski was using journal writing, but I think but by framing that and by honoring that and recognizing that as a legitimate way of documenting and interrogating what is such an ephemeral process for a performer was really empowering. There in the creative, I don't know what field she's in, but the actor's role and the actor's agency in the creative process has always sort of been subordinate to the director and to the writer. What we do comes and goes very quickly, and so the theorizing, journaling as a creative practice and how that opens up the issues I then turned into chapters was a great way in, and it was and as a non-academic, as someone who actually didn't do an undergraduate degree, who just sort of jumped into an honors thing, that was hugely opening up and hugely pleasurable and empowering to work that way. It's just you have to frame it. That's the key. You have to frame that as a legitimate methodological method. Yeah, and so now I found all the literature that you can help to back it, and now we've added to it. So that's good.
Good. Oh, we have two, and we have one from Nat's dad. He's already got a book. Oh.
Okay, sorry. My question is much more of a generalist one to Tiffany, and it's about beginning a PhD, and how do you choose, if you're able to, supervisors? Because it seems to me from your writing that has been one of the most important areas that allowed you to finish your PhD. How do you go about finding the supervisor that will ensure that you get through it, or at least give you the ability?
I think this question is coming from experience after reading the book.
Yes. Oh, and can I firstly say, great genetic pool there, Nat. Boom. Oh, I'd like to apologise on behalf of everybody. Have a book for that.
Oh, gee, it's real. That's a really good question, Nat's dad, because I think it's a really big problem, to be honest, because we all come into a PhD going, oh, I'm just so grateful you've taken me, and thank you so much, and I don't know anything. And, well, like Tara says, you don't know what you don't know. And I think there needs to be a little bit more education around doing your research and actually going, because it's so problematic because you don't really know going in what you're going to be researching, and you are sort of beholden to the advice of these people who you can't help but hold up as the keepers of wisdom. it's a process. I learned from Tara's vlog that, one of the things that you should do is look at what their research interest is. How many people have they actually brought through to completion? What are the theses that have been published, or do they align with anything that you're interested in? And then always, don't be afraid to have a conversation and I think it's always about relationship building and being able to be really candid about what your interests are and what your focus is, and that conversation will hopefully help guide you. But the big key is, when you're first going into it, not being grateful, but interrogating.
Yeah, it's not a first date. Yeah, it's not, I'm so grateful you've gone out with me. You're so pretty. And you paid for dinner and everything. Whereas actually it's about, you and I look at each other. It's about 15 years into marriage, mate. That's,
I know.
Yeah, well said. So it's about 15 years in going, do I even like this person? Do I like this person? Oh, they're nice to me sometimes. And it's about continuing that long-term relationship. And it becomes different things. I often say, and Will, you might want to speak to this, that when you're supervising, you're almost 8 different people on the journey through. So it starts off like the first date, I really love you. And then maybe you hate each other for a while. And then you go, oh, look, I might like them a bit. And by the end, it's just a slog. And we all have those years of marriage where you go, well, that entire year was a slog. We were paying off the mortgage. It wasn't pleasant, but we're together at the end of it, right? And that's sort of, in many ways, obviously without the sex. Can I just put that out there? Considering where universities are at the moment, it is no sex. No sex, take this out. But it becomes many things. I mean, Tiff, that's my line, is that our relationship is many things, and it's textured and it's deep and it's complicated, and it continues to change. Welcome back, Nat. Have you lost your small intestine? But I mean, is that your vibe to Nat's dad about it becomes many things? That's my rendering from the outside.
Absolutely, yeah. And but you don't know that going in. You just don't. You don't know. You have no idea.
Can I add something from my experience?
Please,
as
Queen
a PhD
Reem.
student? Don't be afraid to change supervisors if your supervisor not sucks, but you're not
No sex. Remember, we're not to no sex.
You're not getting along, or the situation's changed, or your interest in your project has taken a different way. I changed my supervisor, not because I had a bad situation, but simply because he retired and left the university. So I needed to change for the better of my PhD. So that's always an option, and the OGR and the professional staff at the OGR are always supportive if you need to change a supervisor, and you can email them and they'll give you a list of supervisors that might be interested in your topic, or you might be interested in their topic. So that's always an option.
And just reminding people that, and we'll go straight to you, just reminding people that 40% of students change a supervisor or more than one supervisor on the way through. So it is like marriage, again, the parallel, but half the time it works, half the time it doesn't. Speaking of someone who always works, could we go to Professor Peterson? Oh, we have a question then, but we
a second emotion.
Yeah, you rock, Will.
Nat's dad kind of stole my question, but it's a good one. But I was going to ask Tiffany a question. If you were a PhD student at the very beginning and you had this book in front of you, what would be the new information that you would find most useful?
Jeez, that's a great question. I think the clarity of the relationship between the artifact and the exegesis is the thing that's really, really helpful, particularly for a person who wants to go in making art. And I was advised by my first advisor or supervisor, this is not about making art. And I was like, yeah. I really thought, and I know I'm not alone in that, that if you go into the creative arts, you think this is an opportunity to improve your craft. And that's not what it's about. It's about looking at theorizing and looking at the intellectual scaffolding that helps produces new art or houses new art. And that, I think that would have helped me to figure out why I was doing it. I wonder, to be brutally honest, if I still would have done it, which is a little bit scary, but it's just putting it out there that, I think a lot of artists go into it thinking it's going to be something that it's not. And I think that's been really helpful. And in a way, I guess, opening it up to going, well, it doesn't just have to be about art, frees that and uncouples that and gives it more possibilities that I wouldn't have thought of at the first time. So maybe it would have been a different PhD. Yeah.
Did you get a book?
Yeah, you want a book?
You get a book.
How many more books do we have? Cool. Okay, so I do have a question on Slido after that.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You can ask a question.
Hello, this is Leila. I'm a research librarian and I closely work with lots of lovely PhD students daily. And we all know that there is a common challenge for mature PhD students. Most of them work full-time or part-time, and they do the study part-time, and there are family commitments. And, I was wondering if your book, can you share with us any key message or any advice that how they could, manage their time or how they could overcome this obstacle, please?
Look, I'll start with that one, Layla, if you're comfortable. Lovely to see you, my darling, and thank you for all that you do. We have a great privilege at Flinders University for many reasons. One is the average age of our starting PhD student is 40. 40. So in our head, we have this notion of the young male scientist, eager and fabulous. That's about 12 to 13% of our student group. So we come into this, and about a third of our students that applied for a scholarship last year had an impairment or a disability. Our students vary in age from 23. We just enrolled a 93-year-old, Will.
Oh, wow.
So that makes me, Nat's dad, we got him sorted. We're going to enrol him tomorrow. But can I say the great gift of diversity, and I won't get emotional about this, but the great gift of diversity is that diversity makes us strong. And it makes our policies and procedures robust because it has to work for a 23-year-old in experimental physics. It has to work for a 93-year-old in criminology in the United States. 1/3 of our PhD students live outside of Australia. We have the digital doctorate here. So what this book has done is, because this is our lived experience, we have to configure policy and procedure and theory and practice that works for a young man or a fantastic woman in physics and works for a 93-year-old criminologist doing it digitally. And so therefore, this has to be good policy, this has to be robust theory, or else it won't work. So the diversity keeps us honest. And I hope what this book is doing, it allows us to acknowledge that diversity. Because I think, was anybody surprised when I said the average age of starting PhD students is 40?
I was.
Yeah. So, and you weren't. I love you for that. So the assumption, in fact, if you put in PhD student into Google Images, always a lovely thing to do, you will see a young man in a lab coat. Bless. And we love our young men in the lab coats. We also love our wonderful young women in lab coats. But that's not where knowledge is, certainly not all of it. And so this book acknowledges that the creative PhD comes from science and engineering, it comes from allied health, it comes from physiotherapists, big respect to all the physios out there, it comes from speech pathology, and the boundaries and borders of this artefact exegesis thesis are yet to be drawn. So this is an open, engaged book that respects diversity, respects all our crew in terms of sexuality. I particularly want to log our non-binary identifying colleagues and the diversity of the sexuality, gender experiences that is our privilege to be writing policy for at the moment. So we want to acknowledge everything that we are. And if I just use Australia as an example, acknowledging the diversity of what this country is about, and our universities need to be acknowledging that diversity. The elite, white, straight, male version of the university has been over for 70 years. And it's time that the policy and the procedures and higher education studies acknowledges that and welcomes students, as we are doing with this stream, welcomes you wherever you are around the world and acknowledges all the journey that has brought you here too. So the diversity and the narratives that have brought you here, they are respected. You're not a tabula rasa. You're not, oh, right, well, you've done that, but we're not interested in that. We are desperately interested in the life narratives that you bring to us, and the thesis takes you somewhere else. Please, Layla, go.
Very much. That was great, and it's great to hear that you considered all of that diversity, and I can imagine how complex it would be to consider people from different ages, different background, different contexts, and to come with a policy that suits everyone. So well done all. Thank you, and I'm so keen to read the book. And so my second more specific question to you all, and maybe specifically to Nat, I was wondering how you could manage your time while you were working full-time and you were a full-time mom with family commitments and you had a PhD to complete.
With difficulty. There were a few tears. You just do it. Those of us who are mums know you just do it. You just wake up in the morning and it's another day and you just get on with it. And you just have to. And you only think a day ahead, sometimes not even that far. Right? What's for breakfast or what's for lunch? And then you move on. Whatever happened yesterday is gone. And you don't dwell on it. Just compartmentalise it, forget it. Probably helps I don't have a very good memory. I look forward. Sometimes too far, but just squeeze every bit in that you can out of the day, and don't be too hard on yourself. I was sometimes probably a little bit hard on myself, but
you certainly were.
But Tara was very forgiving when I said, "Oh, I'll get you that draft next week," and it was the week after. She understood. Life happens. And you just do your best. But I really like what you said, Tara, about done is better than perfect, because sometimes that's my problem, perfectionism. So I'll drag it out and it will take too long. And Mum's nodding her head vigorously there.
All your staff are as well.
But just do it. Little bit by little bit, chunk it away. And it happened.
And enjoy the day. Live for the day. Enjoy the day. I think that's the one lesson 2020's given us, isn't it? That tomorrow isn't promised to anybody. And just enjoy the day. Suck the marrow out of life, Natalie. Thank you for that.
And by the way, if anyone wants to do a systematic review, go to Layla.
Oh, yes, Layla is the queen of everything, including the systematic review. Even scoping reviews. You're moving into scoping reviews. Who knew that was a thing? Well, it's a thing. So, Layla, you rock. Great jacket too, can I say? That blue was very well chosen.
Let's take the last question from Slido. Tara, this is for you. Are there special considerations when finding or selecting examiners for a creative PhD? Rayma, you get a book.
Hi, Rayma. I'm looking at Will Peterson because obviously I'm having a series of fights in car parks with people about this one, but I always win because I'm a tough car park fighter. Look, I have a whole series of things about selecting examiners, and you two can please grab it at any time. But examiners must be of international standing. The reason I took on this job and the reason I came back to Australia, to be frank, and I'm prepared to be as frank as I always am, but I took this job because I believe doctoral education is the last stand of our universities. And if we let the standards in a doctoral program dumb down, then we might as well close our universities today. Right? So a lot of weird stuff has occurred internationally in undergraduate programs, and to be honest with you, and this is the dean role, I suppose, is that the buck stops with me, and not on my watch. not on my watch. So we require international standing of our examiners. We require, and it appears this is the challenging component of the creative arts PhD examiners, is we particularly at Flinders University fight very strongly to not have a conflict of interest. So that means that examiners must not have written with or around the supervisors. So examiners and supervisors must not write, and indeed examiners and students must not have written around. They mustn't know each other, they mustn't have slept with each other, they mustn't have had a really drinking binge and end up in a gutter at a conference, right? Because Natalie Hills will find that picture on Instagram. So what is important with an examiner is they must be of international standing, they must be research active, and that can indeed mean engaging with artefacts, having the artefacts validated as research, which I'm very comfortable with, but also ensuring that there is no conflict of interest. And in this particular field, we are challenged quite frequently by supervisors who, and look, I won't be crass, that's my father, I won't be crass, but he would call it dial-a-mate. Dial-a-mate. And I'm against dialing a mate, because we require that separation between the supervisor and the examiner, because that separation engages quality assurance. If you involve someone you know them. You've bought them a beer. Hopefully you haven't had sex with them. We were there earlier. That's the point. We need the lack of connection or engagement. So that's what's important to me. Yes, it's about content expertise, but there must also be a lack of conflict of interest. Nat, do you want to go in there, mate?
I think it's really important, the choice of examiners. I think for the supervisors, they have to ensure the examiners are research active, because what is a PhD? It's an original contribution to knowledge. And how is that examiner going to judge your special original contribution to knowledge if they don't know what the current knowledge is? It's so critically important. Tara's talked about conflicts of interest, and I'm really staunch on that. She always calls me staunch, but it's true. My job is to uphold the integrity of Flinders University's PhDs. And I do that not just for the university, but I do it for the students, because you have put so much work and dedication into this degree. You want it to mean something. You want it be at the end, be able to hold it up and say, this is equivalent to international PhDs around the world. It wasn't examined by my friend's mate, my supervisor's mate. I did this by myself, and I'm deserving to be called doctor. And that's why the choice of examiners is so important. And the conflicts of interest are really important to me, because integrity of the degrees and your integrity matters so much.
And final point about that too, that it is a mobile degree that will, if we've got a student at Flinders University, you and I pride ourselves that our students work around the world. And so therefore this degree must have as much credibility in Japan as in Canada as in New Zealand. It must be able to move so that when they see a PhD at Flinders, that the colleagues on the interview panel know that it is a powerful, potent piece of research.
Thank you everyone for your amazing questions, and thank you for your amazing answers. Just to end...
Can we firstly just thank Reem? How fantastic was Reem?
Thank you.
The Reem stream was magnificent, darling.
Thank you. Just to end, what's next? Shall we expect Creative PhD Part 2? Shall we expect another book?
Right now, actually, I am making a filmed version of the performance that my PhD was about. So examining how you can move from the ephemeral into the filmed version, direct to camera. So still building an intimate relationship with an audience through the lens, which we are also familiar with right now, and that could very possibly turn into another sort of iteration of multimodality and the actor's role in the performance.
And you realise you just came up with the title of the book there in that answer, don't you? Through the lens, colon.
Multimodality.
Well done.
Nat, what's next?
A little bit of sleep, I'm not sure, but in terms of the workspace, Tara and I are doing a little bit more work on policy writing and some tools for our students around the artefact and exegesis, and we're having some conversations with supervisors as well. We're also going to be doing a little bit more work around the PhD by prior publication, which is a different type of degree also. Who knows? There's an idea, Tara.
And will be something there, because that had a great heritage too. Those of you that remember from the United Kingdom, the late 80s, early 90s in the UK, when the polytechnics were becoming universities, the PPP, the PhD by prior publication, was a thing for the new universities. And yet now it has a resurgence as great professionals with master's degrees are now deciding perhaps they want to go to a PhD, not take 3 years, but they've got the publications in place. So that's a fascinating, wonderful space for professionals as well. So that indeed could be a thing. I am spending time at the moment, obviously I've just produced a talk on Jordan Peterson, so I'm heavily medicated. But I am working at the moment on a book which will be finished, I think, in some form by January next year, called The Claustropolitan University. And it is looking at, and I think the subtitle will involve the university at the end of the world. And I'm very much looking at panic learning, the crisis that exists in our universities at the moment, which is a crisis of leadership, a crisis of teaching, but most importantly, it's a crisis of purpose. And so I'm trying to, if you like, if I'm being posh and pretentious, probably try and revision higher education so that we actually have an answer, Will, to the question, why are we doing this? And have an answer that actually means something. So that's what I'm working on at the moment.
Great. Nat, do you want everyone to know how many theses you've put up for examination so far? Would you want to answer that?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, be prepared, people.
I think since Tara and I have been working together, I ran a report and over 600.
Wow.
Theses have come through our team.
Phenomenal.
So that is what our professional staff at Flinders do.
Fantastic.
Do you want to end?
Oh, you want me to end? So can I just firstly thank all the wonderful people in the room. How exciting was this? Thank you for being a part of this. It was firstly fantastic. And just putting out there, hashtag how weird is COVID? How weird is this sort of, I was hoping several marriages and relationships would be formed, but it's quite challenging with the degree of separation occurring here, except you two are married. That was perhaps not the face to be doing after that sentence, though. And can I thank all our wonderful friends on the Reem stream who have joined us from all over the world. There's a stack of people drinking heavily, I know, at this point. And we thank you for your participation. We thank you for the support of this book. The book's great. The book's selling well. That's fine. But the project matters more. And I really thank you for supporting high-level, integrated, collaborative work in making our universities mean more and become better. So thank you, Reem.
Thank you. Well, please mingle, but socially distant. And please help yourself to some cookies and maybe a drink. And please feel free to have a look at the posters around the room if you would like to. Yeah?
Have a chat.
And come and have a chat. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.